Hey everybody, I'm Laurie Rudiman. Welcome to Corporate Drinker, a punk rock HR production. In each episode, Corporate Drinker explores the intricate ties between work culture and alcohol. Now, there's no judgment here. The podcast tells stories of regular people like you and me who may have complicated relationships with drinking. I'll talk to leadership gurus, therapists, addiction specialists, and even HR and marketing professionals who have hot takes on how and why alcohol and work have become so interconnected. And of course, I'll speak to brilliant people with big ideas on cultivating genuine cultures of inclusion and belonging so leaders and employees can enhance their work environment and reduce unnecessary conflict with or without alcohol. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce you to my friend, Bryan Wempen. Bryan serves as the Chief Revenue Officer at Remble.com, an innovative platform using AI and a human touch to reshape mental health support. Bryan's work at Remble is helping to make mental health assistance immediate, accessible, and personalized. Off the clock, Bryan is a husband, a veteran, and an accomplished author. He's written insightful books such as Sober is Better, My Note to Self, and Note to Self, a collection of 99 life lessons. What's more exciting is that Bryan has another book on the horizon. It's called Fuck My Demons, a next chapter in recovery, and it adds to his candid exploration of sobriety and recovery. Today, Bryan's on the show because we're delving into his story. Spoiler alert, he was a drinker. And we talk about the significance of a recovery mindset, the transformative power of kindness, and the need for self-compassion. I don't know if you know this about me, but whenever I'm feeling out of sorts, Bryan is in my personal board of directors, and he helps me ask better questions about my interactions and my activities. And honestly, I always leave our conversations feeling grounded. So sit back today, relax, and enjoy this chat with the one, the only, my good buddy, Bryan Wempen. Hey, Bryan, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Laurie. Glad to be here.
Well, before we get started with all things corporate drinking, of which I would say you know a thing or two about, why don't you tell us who you are and what you do for a living?
Sure. Bryan Wempen. I live in beautiful Santa Fe, New Mexico. My lovely wife, Michaela, my partner in crime. And I'm an author. I am in recovery, and I work in healthcare technology, trying to make an impact in people's lives and do something relevant with my own life.
Well, we're going to talk about it all today. You've got this amazing and powerful story about addiction and recovery. You've also had some fun along the way, but it's all fun and games until shit hits the fan. So do you mind telling us what's gone on in your life and what brings you to where you are today? And I recognize that it's hard to do that in a couple of minutes, but I would love to hear the top line overview. What's your story?
So the kind of the longer version was just an uncomfortable kid, and started to find ways to kind of remediate that comfort a bit and find ways to feel better and externally. And started young, and I kind of fall right in line with the national average on, I started drinking at 13, 14, is where it started.
Wait, do you remember your first drink?
Oh, I remember several of my first drinks. Yeah. My first drinks were I was 5 or 6, and then really more actively sort of quasi first drinking 8 or 9. But the first time that I actually had the opportunity just to go all in and drink as much as want with no consequences was the first time I, at 14, blacked out, threw up, did stupid shit, was really hungover, right? So that was the very first time that I had the opportunity to go all in, and do I stop because it feels like it's getting out of control, or do I go all in? And I went, I hit the gas super, super hard. And that started. Then by 16, I was a daily drinker, and thank goodness I was I was not the best student, but definitely wasn't the worst student. And so I kind of got left alone, was a pretty good athlete and was a pretty decent person and was a hard worker and all that stuff. So I kind of just, I checked all the boxes to where people always had other people they were like getting on and you
Just
know,
under the radar.
100%. Like I've always, that kind of just elongated, not really having a ton of like significant consequences, like many wrecked cars. But literally when I hit college is when I had another chance to do whatever I wanted. And so I worked a lot, studied very infrequently, and then found drugs, and that put everything on like turbocharged SpaceX, whichever one of those you want to pick.
Right. You're on the Elon Musk track there with your addictions. Well, wait a second. I mean, you found drugs, and a lot of people would think, okay, you get out of college and you've been partying pretty hard. There's no way you can enter into the corporate arena and succeed. But that's not your story. You've had a career.
Yeah, yeah, and it was fast. I mean, I always, I grew up on a ranch, right? So you just working hard is just part of the deal. Like you don't know any different. So I always worked hard, right? No matter what. Sometimes it wasn't very productive, but I was always
Putting
putting
in
the
the
time
hours.
in.
Yeah.
Always had multiple jobs and stuff. And so, once I had a brush with overdosing right toward the end of college. So I kind of was getting off the drug train because it kind of freaked me out a bit. And so and then leaving college, you kind of left your sources. And so, and your, the folks you were running with that had access and maybe were or were not the best kind of, guiding principles of individuals to be around at that point in time. And so and once I got removed, I just sort of stopped. And again, the brush with the OD kind of freaked me out. But I just drank actually more, right? That's all I did. I just switched to more drinking. So that sort of picked up. But yeah, I lucked into a job, HR related job of all things. And what they needed was right in line with kind of how my personality worked and how my mind worked. And so I started with a very small company that was, I mean, fairly small. And over the course of the next 7 years, I basically got promoted to literally up to like the third or fourth in charge. It took it public. I was on the board. Like it was all these things, just all these things was making just a sickening amount of money. And
But you were drinking.
oh my God, I surrounded myself with folks to kind of cover my back. And I put together a team, and I was always one of the top, if not the top performer in the company. So that bought me a lot of unhealthy grace on all the things that should never be tolerated, totally toxic.
Well, wait. Like what? Like you're drinking. Are you drinking with colleagues? Are you going out
Oh,
drinking on company
yeah,
time?
yeah, 100%. I was taking, teams to the bar, always the last one to leave. And I really, a big part of this is I didn't really drink too much at home. I mainly drank out on the road, right, in a corporate environment. So, that was the place that I could and again, I was the one in charge, right? So they would get me home. They would, I would fulfill and just so many things that were unhealthy. And it was a very toxic culture to the company, which only contributed to the fact that I could kind of do whatever I wanted.
Wait, that's really interesting. A toxic company culture that you also leaned into heavily
100%.
and made a little bit more toxic. Yeah.
They enabled, yeah, and I mean, one of the things that I have made a point to find some people that I really did care about as colleagues, friends. I mean, I've made a point to kind of try and make amends for that time because I could have been the one that was actually helping them and trying to develop my own skill set. I did not have my mentorship was was good from a like critical thinking standpoint, but from everything else was absolutely not supportive of moving my skill set up to like from a manager standpoint and from being a better human being standpoint was anemic. Like it didn't exist. It was a very misogynistic culture. It was a very, when you got down to the core, was a very racist culture, which good thing was the saving grace is I'm neither of those, so I didn't participate in any of that, right? So I had some good things that were, thank goodness, innately in place that I made sure and was very protective of the things that was counterintuitive, right? Like my area was like I had zero tolerance for like things that you should have zero tolerance for, right? Like
Which is
that
interesting. That
nonsense.
buys you the grace then when you do have some deficiencies. People are like, oh, he's a good guy. He's got my back. I'm going to have his back.
100%.
Yeah,
Right.
I see that. I see that. Well, it's interesting because you're at that company, but your career doesn't end then. I mean, you go on to do other great things, right? And you're still drinking, correct?
Yeah, no, it was like it really got because I mean I was young and I was making, like I said, I was making a small fortune every 2 weeks, and that's a horrible combination, and just getting unhappier, week by week, month by month. So when I got done with that, it took a few years to kind of decompress from that, and I wasn't in recovery yet, so I wasn't gaining any skills to deal with stress and life and relationships and in communication in a healthy way. I didn't have any of those skills. I was just a fucking train wreck. And so it always looked like I was just fairly solemn with my mood, but it was just the underpinnings was all so miserable. So yeah, so I left and went on to buy part of a HR software company. It was small, and then we basically built that a bit, and I ended up merging that with my part of it with another HR software company that got a little bit bigger, and then left and then went to work for another one, and but kind of just parlayed that into just the different relationships and multiple technology companies and all those things. And so finally got I find and the thing is, it never, like, there were periods where it got worse and better and worse and better and worse and better, but just there was a common theme that it was never going to get better, and I tried to moderate in every way that's possible,
Yeah, and we met during that period. So you would have ups and downs and I saw it. I experienced some of that with you at different events, at different conferences. And in talking to you, sometimes things didn't seem so dour, you weren't so sad, and that could have been the effects of alcohol. And then sometimes you just seemed so sad, but the entire time I knew you, you seemed like such a warm, wonderful human being. So that came through.
I
And
appreciate that.
yeah, of course, of course.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Ames, your host of Signals, a Starbold Studios production. I'm taking bold ideas and real challenges submitted by leaders like you and turning them into powerful conversation with actionable results. Some weeks, I'll react in just 4 minutes. Others, I'll bring on experts for deeper dives. So send up a signal and I'll throw you a line.
Yeah, because you're one of the handful of people that I actually met, and like in kind of the HR kind of social media space slash just the beginnings of that I actually met, that I drank with
Hmm.
before I got into recovery. So
Fuck, we drank. We drank.
and I actually, it's funny because I have a picture. I only have like two picture. I didn't have a lot of pictures, but I have a picture of us in actually in London at a bar together, drinking. So
Messy,
that's pretty
messy. Oh
rare.
my
That's pretty
goodness.
rare. That's pretty odd. So I hold that, but you know what? I hold that in very high regard, because that was just literally so almost 3 months to the day that and the interesting thing is, I think you were in Chicago. So you were there the last day that I ever did drink.
Oh
Like,
my gosh, is that true? What was that day?
It was May 8th, 2010. And we were at an event in Chicago that was one of the unconference things, like in that second floor, that second floor called like
Oh,
the
I remember this. It was like at the Jewel Box or something stupid.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was on a second floor in Chicago. And because the night before, the first night we were at like, I don't know, like the Wit had like a happy, and it's real crystal. There's a lot of it's really crystal clear because it was miserable, just miserable. And I'm 99% sure, or at 90% sure you were there.
My goodness. So what was it about that night that was like, I'm fucking done? Because let me tell you, every time I go to an HR conference and I drink, I'm like, I'm fucking done. Because I have to, especially back in the day, I would have to drink so much in order to just make that experience palatable for me. So what was going on with you?
I couldn't tell you. I don't know. There was, part of it was a reality that it's interesting. It's good conversation. There was a lot of people that I knew there, and there wasn't anything like super, super significant that happened, but there were like stayed up, was up late and at the bar and sent a couple text messages that I wasn't super proud of, that was a little out of character. Nothing that was horrible or tragic in a respect, just probably a bit disrespectful. I think that's probably a better way.
We all have sent those text messages.
Yeah,
So yeah, especially in
right.
2010.
And so I think, to this day, I'm very grateful that it was nothing that I've got, just
Yeah, you're not canceled.
yeah, I'm not canceled. But it was one of those that I had a reality. One, I felt god awful the next day, but I had a reality that social media and the communication mechanisms were changing the visibility of what I had worked a lifetime to hide. And I just had this like moment that it's like, I'm either going to do something horrible and drive and kill somebody. The option is to kill myself, or I could maybe try the third option. And I'd met people and had friends that were in recovery. Maybe I could try recovery. And so I definitely went with that option first. And that was, again, that was like I called somebody the very next day and said, hey, can I meet with you and have coffee? And I want to kind of talk this through, because it was somebody that I knew very, very well, that had like a decade of recovery. And it was a guy, and his story was off the hook, right? Like he had, and you would never guess it to this day in a million years, but his story was as wild as you can possibly get. And other than, a long-term prison sentence, that was the only thing that he probably didn't have.
Wait, isn't that always or often how it is? People who don't look the part have played the part in private.
100%. Like there are so many people that, especially, it's older people. Like I know a lot of people that are sick, with 60 isn't that much older anymore, but 60, 70, 80 years old that have been in recovery. And when they tell their story, you just can't, it's hard to reconcile, because them as like this older man or older woman that is really put together because they have 30, 40, 50 years of recovery. And you're like, holy shit, that is awesome that you're alive.
Yeah. I was just thinking about like every AA experience I've had. I've gone into these meetings where people have told stories. By the way, they always involve either killing someone, shitting their pants, peeing on themselves. They're just crazy stories. And you're like, oh my God, you're a CFO. Like what? How are you successful? It's amazing. It's amazing.
And that's part of what people in recovery, and you can really very quickly know that, because stuff that is just send people sideways and into turmoil when you tell a story that, mainstream society would just be, borderline appalled and maybe traumatized a bit by hearing those things. And, if you're in a group of people that have tried recovery, been in recovery, part of recovery, I mean, shit's funny. It's got to be funny, because if it's not funny, then it becomes weighty, and weighty becomes, dangerous. So you got to let that stuff go. You can't hang on to it. That's one of the core things that I've learned. You have to let shit go and figure out a way to move past it, even if it's not my business, right? I have to let it go. I can only have so much of a percentage of sanctimonious feeling of injustice in the world, because I don't have the capacity to carry that much. Like, I can still be like, that's fucking wrong. That's bullshit. And that person or the people doing that are complete pieces of shit. It's all right to say it, but I got to let it go. I can't hang on to that because things attached to it. That's my personality, right? Like, the one is good, but five is always better. It equates to bad things too, right? If I have negative feelings, five more jump on immediately and just start to fuel. It starts to hit all of those receptors that I get this like weird charge about just being pissed. So I try to not go there unless absolutely, absolutely that I have to.
Your background is interesting because it's really driven a passion for recovery and addressing, substance abuse and misuse in the workplace. So can you talk about that and some of the work that you do today?
Sure. Oh, absolutely. That's every single day when you are aligned with kind of the mission in your life that interests you, even because I'm definitely a bitcher and a moaner about things. I can get sideways, like I can get fired up about things because it's not the way that I think it should work, right? So that's a daily process that I'm like, okay, just chill out, right? It's let it go. So what helps is the fact that the company, I mean, I work for a company called Chess Help that they basically what they do is they have built a evidence-based app that came out of the University of Wisconsin 10 years ago, a National Institute of Health grant. And what it does is it provides 24/7 support for individuals in recovery through a provider relationship, right? So they're associated with some kind of treatment program, outpatient, intensive outpatient. So that 24/7 is basically monitored and facilitated by a group of certified peers that work virtually across the country. And so what the great thing is I literally know everybody I'm basically over sales for tribal health and also for about 5 or 6 states. Everyone that we get as a customer that then presents it to the clients they work with, individuals, there's a good chance that we're definitely going to impact their life if they use it, but we got a good chance to save their life. And that makes what I do, no matter how tedious it can be on some of the things, I know I mean, I get up and I'm like, okay, I've got to make more calls. I've got to email. I got to get people's attention. I got to get them to see the value so that they can present these to individuals, because we can save generations of people if we do this. And so this is the first time that I've had it all align, where like my lifestyle is aligned with what I get paid to do every day. And that solves a lot of like internal frustration and turmoil. I let things go because I know the bigger mission is important. So you just got to keep going and not get quagmired down. So I feel very grateful to be able to do something that I actually get to talk to people all day long about recovery, literally all day long, that they're either in it or they're administrating it or they're helping people get in it or stay in it. Like, that's what I do every single day. And and make a pretty good living at it. So that's pretty awesome.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because I think optimally that's where we all want to head, right? But we can still get bits and pieces of this in our lives. And I feel like one of the things that you did early was start writing about your experiences and create a platform for yourself as like an early way to align your work and your passions and your hobbies with how you wanted to change the world. So, can you tell us about some of the things you've written about your book, about articles? Like, I also want to know, what's it like to write about something that's so raw and close to the heart?
Sure. No, and I appreciate the question. And it was important. You're exactly right. I mean, I always wanted to write books because probably think a lot of myself, I suppose, at times. And so I figured I had a voice. I could maybe help one or two people, but I wanted to get it out there as something that was more tangible. So 2014, I think I started writing my first book, which you supplied some story, a story for that. God, it's been almost 10 years ago
I
now.
know, I know. And I'm a different kind of corporate drinker now.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how life changes, right? So that one was kind of my first, like my first kind of entry point into understanding writing. I am not a natural writer. I don't have like the a lot of the fundamental basics. Like we all know people that are probably yourself included that are really good writers. I definitely am. I am if I get put in the average writing category, I consider that a win on a big level.
Aren't we always our worst critics? But what I love about your writing is that it really drills home a point for me. Something I've learned from you is that thinking about wellness, thinking about well-being isn't just like about buying technology. It's not just about talking the talk, right? It's really about a broader strategy to create a more diverse and inclusive work environment. I mean, you were early to this, Bryan. You were thinking about this subject before it kind of got trendy. So, I'm glad to see you were writing and thinking about this, but can you knit that together for us? Like, a lot of people wouldn't think that belonging has anything to do with drinking, right? And yet the two go hand in hand. So tell me more.
Have you ever wondered what really makes a generation tick? Who gets to pick the name? And why the slang keeps changing? Don't worry, I can help. My name's Dr. Megan Grace. On hashtag Gen Z, I share the voices and experiences of Generation Z, how they're different from other generations, what moves them, and why they do what they do. In each episode, we go beyond the buzzwords and the stereotypes to dive into real conversations and the insights that matter to making intergenerational collaboration a reality. You can catch hashtag Gen Z on the Work to Find podcast network and wherever you listen to podcasts.
Yeah, yeah. And so what I shared in the writing, which was, kind of an interesting process and incredibly scary and cathartic kind of at the same time, was the fact that the majority of my socializing all had to do with corporate related events, right? That was really the taking off point in adulthood, because that's really your social circle for the most part, because that's who you spend your day with. That's who you end up meeting people as an adult. It's way more complex to actually make friendships if you don't work with somebody, which I'm very thankful to have our friendship, because we never worked together.
No, we just hung out together in a weird way. I love it. It's perfect.
We did. We were in a movement, right?
Right. Yeah. A bunch of nerd bloggers. Yeah, that's what we were. Well, so, when you make all of your friends at work and you travel with them, I mean, it's just natural to wind up at the bar, right?
And it's one of those things that unfortunately you kind of nailed that is that's the common pathway that there is. You have indirect and you have very overt pressure that's the place, right? All the events are happy hours, all of the spending time is, especially younger. I mean, you're kind of burning in these pathways that are definitely not fucking healthy, right? But they're very socially today. I mean, they're very socially accepted. And that's one of the biggest problems is that needs to, that whole framework absolutely has to shift. There's other ways to do it. But from a social standpoint, like turn the TV on, right? Like every single marketing direction and the overall society, it's very, very accepted to have the glass of wine, have a couple beers, just do that thing, right? And without a lot of alternatives being presented, because that's the sexy, that's the fun, that's the, youth oriented, like all those things are
But it's
meant.
also like, to my earlier point about drinking with colleagues or drinking at work events, like, I don't necessarily want to be with these people, right? So, what's going to make that easier? 3 mimosas or, 3 cranberry martinis or whatever crappy sugary shit I'd been drinking in the past, right? So it's almost like, all right, I got to do this. What's going to make it easier? And what would make it easier would be excusing myself and going to bed.
Yeah, no, and you're spot on, right? There doesn't feel like there's alternatives, and it doesn't feel like you're empowered. And again, this comes back to kind of leadership and setting culture from a corporate standpoint, is the going to bed versus the forced, like, bullshit camaraderie piece. Sometimes, again, there's sometimes that it is and it does make sense, right? But not all the time. Let people do their thing. And again, it's one of those things that it's getting now, especially because I deal with updates on fentanyl like every day, right? So you don't have the luxury, if you call it that, where, you can go and dabble into social stuff as an adult because you're out partying or whatever, what gets put in front of you. Like that could be a one and done, right? That's that's popular or not. We'll call it the easy way out for some people. Otherwise, you could just walk the very slow 20-year path to death if you drink yourself or use yourself into, an oblivion. There's just all those things.
So what are the strategies then? Like, I think about all the events that I've been to, all the work dinners, right? I mean, what are the innovative alternatives that you've seen companies implement to get away from that corporate drinking culture?
Yeah, they're far and few between, unfortunately.
Yeah, we can leave it at that because I think that's
I
accurate.
mean, that's the saddest point with that. And the good thing is you do have some companies, and I don't have it firsthand, right? But you have some companies that are very focused on more about humanity and more about changing, like redirecting, like just shifting what those frameworks have happened in the past. Because what happens is you get people drinking, and then you get people making, substance related, basically misbehaving because they're under the influence of it, right? And so what that happens is probably I would say the majority happen, whether majority is 60% or 80% or whatever, happens to, men doing it to female. Like it's
Hmm.
not exclusive, but it's a hell of a big percentage.
Yeah, it's heavily favored towards men behaving badly. Yeah.
100%. And so I think there's companies that actually recognize that, right? It's not a wellness strategy. It's not it's not a strategy that's fair and equitable. They know for a fact if they put this group together and depending on the role, like sales teams are infamous for it, right? They're the somewhat toxic role anyway, but then you put that together, and if it's a culture of old boys club and a culture of everything that goes along with that nonsense, it's just fucking terrible, right?
Yeah. Well, I just wonder as we start to wrap up the conversation, what you want people to know about yourself, what you're trying to do in this world. How are you being helpful? And I'm going to ask a question that I ask a lot of people. What do you think you learned from everything? Like this experience? Like what has this taught you?
Yeah, great wrap up questions. So part of what I'm continuing on and I'm shifting out of, so I got another book coming out, hopefully this summer, toward the end of the summer, that's called Fuck My Demons. And it's a little
Fuck
more,
my demons. I love it. So
little
punk
more
rock.
little more provocative. So that'll be the last in the series of the books I've written, the nonfiction books that I've written. And I'll tie this all together here in a second. And then I've got my first fiction book coming out. So I'm shifting off nonfiction into fiction because I just want to kind of round out the experience of writing. And I've always wanted to write a fiction book.
From a dude who says he's not a natural writer, written more books than anybody I know.
Yeah, no, and I'm co-writing it using OpenAI. So it's kind of a project that's like super, super, a little bizarre and so much fun. It's ridiculously big fun.
That's awesome.
But in doing all of that, I incorporate into all of like the fiction writing. I've got people who struggle with addiction, like substance use disorder. Like I have that, and get help and don't get help, right? So I weave it into just every story that I tell, everywhere I can do it, right? I wouldn't say that I'm, I don't want to be preachy about it because everybody's got their journey, and people being preachy to me just made me want to not do it anymore.
Makes me want to drink more. Yeah.
Right. Like you literally just want to prove all that wrong. So the biggest thing that I've learned is every tolerance has a lot of different, like with yourself and cutting yourself a break. All of that has a lot of different levels of how that happens. And so I have some things that I feel very strongly about, like in society today, that I am absolutely 100% intolerant of. You shouldn't ever let that go, right? But I tend to structure my life so that that's very situational. Like when I have the energy and I'm in the right space, I can contribute to the conversation and support the right thing to do. But the most of the time, that's not the case, right? I'm just trying to take care of my own shit and self-care and be a good human being and a partner to my wife and a good stepfather to our kids and just be a decent person to be around. And that takes a lot of intention. It takes a lot of work. And so what I've learned is you can't really coast very long because you'll end up, what'll happen is you feel an element of respite for about a second, and then you'll feel bad because right?
Yeah, that's true.
That's what I've learned. Listen to the good people I'm around and to myself a little bit more on just doing the right thing.
Well, I'm so glad you shared your story, shared some insights, and have shared your journey with me. And also, I'm so glad that we're friends. Like, I'm a better person for it. So, when you work on your shit and you take care of yourself, you're a great friend and a mentor to me. So, thank you for that.
Well, I absolutely could not have articulated that any better. I've always valued and loved our friendship, and it's exactly the same when you share. And our personalities have a lot of similar things, and we have some things that are a bit different. And I love that because it helps challenge areas that I get to work on, and you have to have that. And from my opinion, you have to have that.
Yeah, I don't want a friend like me because I can barely stand myself. That's how that goes for me. Well, Bryan, thanks again for being a guest.
Thank you for the invite. I love the conversation. I appreciate everything that you're doing with this, with the project and these conversations, because it all does help, because people you got to connect with something. You don't connect with something, you're kind of just floating, right? So I really project.
Oh, thanks. The Corporate Drinker Podcast is a special series brought to you by Punk Rock HR. If you like what you heard, head on over to your favorite streaming platform and leave a 5-star rating and a review. You can also head on over to punkrocktr.com for news, information, show notes, and all the good stuff related to Corporate Drinker. This episode was expertly produced and edited by my friends at Emerald City Productions, with special help from Danny and Michael. That's it for today's show. Thank you for joining us. We'll catch you next time on the Corporate Drinker Podcast.